Do you not want to look at them or anyone, or what are you thinking about?
Well, you're going to still want to look at them on your tickets because, if you get fast fractions, closers are going to be there in any race. If the fractions are fast enough. That's one thing about closers. They're always coming at the end. The problem is they either hit traffic or they run out of racetrack. If they go, slow fractions, you're dead. If they go, regular fractions in this race, you can still get up for second, third, fourth, fill out the bottom ends of those, but it's less likely that you're going to have a stone-cold closer win the Preakness. For that to happen, you need really fast fractions up front.
Which horses will be the front runners of this race and lead the pace?
Well, Improbable, because of his post position and his tactical speed, I think is going to be sitting somewhere 1, 2, 3. War of Will, because he did race so good and they got him out of the gate so well last time out, I also expect him to be sitting right off the pace. The horse that might inherit the lead by default could be Bodie Express. And this is a horse that really is an interesting horse. He's the only horse in the race that's a maiden. And generally, you don't see too many maidens in a Triple Crown race.
Right, and maidens mean you never won a race, so just wanted to make sure.
Never won a race yet, and this is a horse that the owners and the trainer really have to be high on him to race him in 2 of the Triple Crown races. Now, you could say, hey, all right, he raced in the Derby. All right, we took our shot. He didn't make it. Let's go get our win somewhere. But I'm going to point out 2 things. The fact that they're willing to pony up the money to race in a Triple Crown race again shows that they really do believe in the horse. Because a lot of times the Derby, if you have enough points, guys will stick a horse in that don't belong just because, as an owner, you dream of having a horse in the Kentucky Derby. Mm-hmm. Whether you win the race or not, the first thing is to get a horse in the Derby. Then the second thing is to win one. So they already did that. So coming back tells me they really do believe in this horse. Second, if you go back and watch everything that happened in the Kentucky Derby with the incident, Bodie Express was in the thick of things. And this is a horse that got forgotten in the talks. He got absolutely sandwiched off between War of Will and Long Range Toddy. He got, Long Range Toddy got the pinball effect. He got the domino effect. After Long Range Toddy and War of Will crashed, he was the horse in between those two, and just the jockey had to grab him up. So it took all of his momentum away. He was right there in the thick of things in that last turn. And if you remember, this horse followed Maximum Security all the way around the Florida Derby track at Gulfstream and finished second to him. So the horse shows if Maximum Security came back and raced as big as he did, this horse was interfered with in the Derby and also ran second to Maximum Security in the Florida Derby. So he's going to be forwardly placed, and if they go slow fractions, he could be hanging on right there at the end in this race at a big number.
So it sounds like Bodie Express is definitely a horse you won't be throwing out here. Hint, hint, right?
Hint, hint, yes. And that's definitely a very good hint, hint. And I also got to say you're getting a big jockey upgrade with John Velasquez.
Yeah, that's what it looks like right there. That's great to know right there. Interesting. Is there anything that the buyers' speed figures say when looking at the horses in this race? Or who's the top ones?
Well, obviously, Improbable's got, the top ratings. He's one of the few horses with a triple buyer figure. They're all so close in this race that any one of them can get there based on, I don't want to say any one of them, of all of the main contenders. And in this race, there's 13 horses in a race. I think the field, we can make a good case for 5 to 7 of the horses. there's 5, 6 horses that are total pitches in my regards in this race. But of the ones that I feel are contenders, all of the Beyer speed figures are in close enough range that all of them can get there.
So it sounds like my next question was, how good is the field? It looks like it's pretty good. Nobody really sticks out.
Yeah, it's a competitive but not great field of horses. When your morning line favorite is Improbable, that's 5-2 and was the beaten favorite at the Derby, it's telling you that there's no powerhouse here. You don't have a 2-1 shot, in this race, or an 8-5 favorite, there's nobody that's worth that in here, because everybody's got upsides, but they also got blemishes. Like I said, with Improbable, you're coming back, and that's something that some people like to do, and some people don't want any parts of it. You're betting on a beaten favorite.
Right, fair enough.
Last time out.
So, I guess let's just ask, who's your favorite to win this race?
Well, based on what we've seen, and again, because we're doing the podcast, we literally did this podcast about 40 minutes after the post position draw. I got to reevaluate what my thinking is going to be on Another Twist of Fate. This horse was racing very good coming up to this race. I thought had a good shot in here. Is really going to be handicapped by the 12 post position. So I got to see if I'm going to put that into my second wave of horses. But off of what I saw from the Derby, and this is one other tidbit from Preakness, generally the horses that run back from the Kentucky Derby are the horses that finish the best in the Preakness. And that's another thing about when we said about this as being the most formful race, they come back. But we can put an asterisk on this year's field. The top 2 horses aren't in here from the Derby, okay?
Right.
So that thins the field out a little bit and makes it a little bit not as dominant with the Kentucky Derby horses. Of the Kentucky Derby horses coming back, War of Will and Improbable obviously have the 2 best shots. So you've got to look at those 2 horses on your tickets. Of the new shooters, one of the horses that intrigues me, and I like his post position, and that's Bourbon War. And Bourbon War, the reason why I look for a big race out of him is we're going to go back to that Florida Derby race. It seems like the Florida Derby race was a legitimate race now. You saw Maximum Security come back and actually win the Derby. You saw Bodie Express, was in the thick of things until the incident. And you saw Code of Honor, the third-place horse in the Florida Derby, finish second in the Derby, place second. Mm-hmm. So that was a very good prep race. Well, who finished 4th in the Florida Derby? It was Bourbon War. And as we talked about so much about that race at the Florida Derby, and one of the reasons why I did talk up Code of Honor for the Kentucky Derby was in a race where they went slow fractions, horses that were coming from out of it had no shot. But Code of Honor came on to be third and was closing. It was a distant third, but that was the only horse that was moving forward. Well, the other horse that was moving forward out of the closers was Bourbon War. The difference between Code of Honor and Bourbon War, Code of Honor got an inside trip, saved ground. Bourbon War was wide in that race. So not only was he trying to make up ground off of very slow fractions, which when you're coming from behind is very hard to do, now give that horse a wide trip. You're covering even more ground when you're trying to make up ground. I think Bourbon War gets a clean trip in here, has an opportunity to really surprise a lot of people. Now, we also have a jockey change on Bourbon War, and this is a jockey change to the better as well. And you've got, no, scratch that. It's not a jockey change on him. It's another equipment change. They're putting blinkers on Bourbon War as well as win-win-win. And as I said with win-win-win, when you do that, generally speaking, you're trying to get the horse fired up at the gate and get out in better position. If this horse is closer to the pace, he's going to be a big factor, I feel, on Saturday. So that is right now my top horse out of the new shooter, so to speak. And then when you look after that, as I said, another Twist of Fate is racing well. And then you also got Always Mining is a horse that's won 6 in a row. 6 in a row. It's a Maryland-bred horse. He's raced exclusively here at Laurel, so he knows the track well. But I can tell you, the last time a Maryland-bred horse won the Preakness, and you would think that this would have happened more often because, you know, it's the home track. It's Maryland. You're going to have people that are going to take a shot at the Preakness. There hasn't been a Maryland-bred win since 1983.
Wow, that's a long time. I wonder if that's a valid trend or not, something you can look at. I do like how you said that the top 2 horses, are thrown out of the Derby, meaning that trend is completely shot here. And so, like you said, you got to keep your eye on these horses, but it's not necessarily something to rely on, being that normally the winner of the Kentucky Derby runs the Preakness and they happen to win it, as you've seen with Justify and a couple other horses the last 5-6 years. So that's really interesting right there. So I guess the question would be, is Bourbon War your long shot bet or any of those horses you discussed?
Bourbon War and Bodie Express are definitely long shots that are going to be on my ticket. Those, even this is one of those races where, because it's so evenly matched, that let's say even Improbable wins the race and you get one of these horses running second, you're going to have a nice exacta, and you can fill out some nice tries and superfectas. So I'm going to have those horses on my ticket. If they make it exclusively on the top tier, that's another question. How I like to do, when I'm betting trifectas, I like to do what I call, a pyramid effect. I'll put 3 or 4 horses in the first slot. I'll repeat those horses in the second spot, and then I'll put more horses in that third spot because, obviously, there's more horses have an opportunity to run third, but have no shot of winning the race. So you can eliminate them from the top of the ticket, keep the cost down on the ticket, and yet still give you good coverage.
Yeah, I think we've all seen you do that, Marco, and it looks like an amazing strategy, being that you've had a lot of success at doing that. Well, which horses are you completely throwing out of the race that won't be on any of your tickets?
Horses that are not going to be on my tickets, and we'll just go in post-position order. I'm not Market King, number 6, not a fan of this horse at all. Signalman, this is a horse that had a little bit of buzz before. I'm not thrilled with him. I wasn't impressed with him before, and after the last race, even less. Everfast was a last-minute addition to the Preakness. I got to look a little bit further at him, but looking at the post where he's going to be out there in the 10 post position, does have a good jockey, Joel Rosario, but the morning line guys don't like him at all, and I'm sure once I see the post past performance lines on him, I'm going to agree. But I also, Laughing Fox is a horse I don't like at all. That's a horse that I won't be using. So throwing out 3 or 4 of them with no shot, and I have like 3 or 4 horses that I'll use on the top, and definitely those horses, as I said, War of Will, Improbable, Bourbon War, and Bodie Express. Those are like 4 good horses on that top line. That you've got 2 horses that legitimate shots and 2 nice price horses that I think you can use, and then we start building the ticket out from there.
Will Bourbon War, being in the 2 post, will he try to lead this race and be a front runner?
He's not capable of it unless the blinkers put a rocket up his rump out of the gate. But I would be happy seeing him getting away 4th or 5th and down at the rail. I would be ecstatic with him in that position, just in that tactical speed stalker position where he's just off the lead. Because if Bodie Express does inherit the lead, it's one thing to follow a horse compared to stalking a horse. It's much easier to stalk a horse. We have a saying in horse racing, You look at a horse that has been finishing second or third or fourth, and they got a real fast time. But you look at it in that race, he was always sitting second, third, or fourth